Hi Stingrays, welcome to chapter 19. It's called Penny Sullivan. See if you can follow along as we read it today. Okay. Penny Sullivan. In my room, the sunlight made flicking stripes across my carpet. Nothing felt right. Everything needed to be cleaned. Every pencil, book, chair leg, light bulb, the walls, all of it. I'll start at the top and work my way down to the skirting boards, and then I'd tackle the smaller items. I put on a pair of gloves and set to work. Standing on the bed, which would need changing afterwards, I began to wipe at the wall with a cloth soaked in antibacterial spray. The wallpaper line had an ear. I'd never noticed that before, but it was there, peeking out from his matted mane, a small golden triangle. Melody thinks I'm lonely, I said to him. Can you believe it? And she's collecting memorial cards. How sick is that? I know she's got the gloves for me, but that's just beyond wrong, isn't it? The wallpaper line's face shone and his drooping eye sparkled. He almost appeared to be smiling, enjoying his little wash. I stopped and stared at him. What if she knows, Lion? What if she sees my note and realises Callum's death was my fault? The wallpaper lion carried on smiling. I imagined him shaking his mane, the tiny droplets of moisture raining everywhere. Voices were coming from outside, and I could see Penny drinking from a mug as she stood on the patio talking to Mr. Charles. I got off of the bed, put my cleaning stuff down and picked up my notebook. Penny Sullivan is next door. She's talking to Mr. Charles, and every now and then she pats him on the arm. Mr. Charles said something about going to see his sister for a few days, and then his home phone began to ring, and he lolloped back indoors. Penny watched him go into the house and then walked along the lawn to the mound of toys that Mr. Charles had dumped next to the shed. Shaking her head a few times, she looked over the pile and picked up a red bucket, which she tipped onto the grass. A few of Teddy's chunky plastic cars fell out, and she reached and took a small orange bulldozer, studying it closely before rolling it up and down her arm. What's she doing? I said. I moved closer to the window. Turning the bulldozer over, she spun each wheel using her thumb, and then Mr. Charles reappeared. What is it? What's happened? Said Penny. Mr. Charles had his head in his hands. It was my daughter. Doesn't want anything to do with me. Said it's my fault. Penny put an arm around him, and he began to cry. They turned and slowly began walking into the house. She was trying to hold her mug and the orange toy in one hand, and her teeth slopped onto the grass. Penny pats Mr. Charles on his back as he sobs. He's such a dear boy, he says. I've never seen him come to any harm. He's such a dear, dear boy. Turning her, patting into a rub, Penny rests her head on Mr. Charles's shoulder for a second. I know, she said. He's such a funny little fellow. I looked up from my notebook and Penny was staring straight at me. I gave her a weak smile and saw her shudder. Penny Sullivan hadn't liked me since Callum died. I didn't have any grandparents. They'd died before I was born, and Mum always seemed to see Penny as a bit of a mother figure. She was around a lot when I was little, telling Mum what to cook and what to buy. She was the local agent for the catalogue called Harrington's Household Solutions, which promised to revolutionise your home with an assortment of items you can't live without. Mum loved that catalogue, and every month she would pore through it, oohing and ahhing at some new fancy gadget that we'd never use. Dad wasn't a fan of Penny's. He thought she was far too overbearing, and I don't think he liked the fact Mum took so much notice of her advice. Turn the page. One Christmas, Mum asked her what type of tree she should get. Stick with a fake one, Sheila. You'll see. You'll still be hoovering up the needles in August if you get a real one. Harrington are doing a lovely synthetic Nordic spruce in the catalogue next month. That'll look picture perfect in your window. That particular year, Dad had wanted a real tree for a change, but Mum would never go against Penny's advice. She's life experienced, Brian. That woman knows what she's talking about. Life experienced? She's an interfering old bag, that's what she is. Always thinking she's right, never listening to what anyone else says. No wonder she's driven both of her kids away. But Mum didn't agree, and it was Penny she called in a panic when she had to rush to the hospital to have Callum. She arrived on our doorstep wearing bright, fluffy, multicoloured sweater and jeans, and she was carrying a large bag stuffed with games. I'd never seen her casual clothes before. Gordon hovered behind her, as always, a newspaper tucked under his arm. Over the afternoon and evening, she taught me how to play hangman, dots and boxes, and battleships, using just a pencil and paper, and we played some old board games that used to belong to her children, like Kaplunk and Chinese checkers. Gordon sat in Dad's armchair, filling in a crossword puzzle, and looked up every now and again when she told him what a good player I was. He's such a quick learner, Gordon. Not like our Jeremy. He could get the hang of board games. Could he, Gordon? Gordon just grunted and shook the paper before squinting down at it again. Every now and then I asked if my new baby brother had arrived yet. I was so excited and I couldn't understand why it was taking so long. Penny just answered, "These things take time, Matthew. These things take time." While we played our games, I kept picking at a large spot that was just above my right eyebrow, which was annoying Penny. "Pick, pick, pick, Matthew. Stop it now. If you carry on picking, we'll end up with a scar, you know." She made beans on toast for dinner and we sat together at the kitchen waiting for the news. I'd never seen anyone eat so delicately. Turn a page. I remember sitting up straighter than I normally would, and I made sure I held my fork the right way. "Penny, do you think he'll have blonde hair or brown hair like mine?" "I don't know, Matthew. Eat your dinner now." Pick, pick, pick. "He might have no hair at all." "Did your babies have hair, Penny? Did you have a boy or a girl?" Pick, pick, pick. "I have a son named Jeremy and a daughter named Anna, and yes, they both had hair. Stop fiddling with that spot now. There's a good boy." I ate 3 more forkfuls of beans and put my cutlery down. Gordon got up and put his plate in the sink, then wandered off to the lounge without a word, and I heard the TV turn on. "Where are your children, Penny? Do they live near here?" Pick, pick, pick. "No, they don't, no." For some unfathomable reason, they both decided to move abroad. Jeremy lived in Brazil and Anna in New Zealand. I gawped at her. "Wow, New Zealand is 1,000,000 miles away. Do they come back and see you?" She shook her head. "Oh, Penny, what does unfathomable mean?" "It means inexplicable or incomprehensible." She looked at my blank face. "It means they both made a silly mistake and should have stayed here. Life would have been a lot happier for them both if they'd stopped being so stubborn and listened to what I had said. Now eat up." Her face was red, her lips pressed tightly together. I ate a few more mouthfuls in silence, then picked at my spot again. "Penny, did Jeremy and Anna not like you very much?" Slam! Penny banged her hand down hard on the table. "Matthew, I said stop picking that spot, or everyone will know what you did for the rest of your life." My orange juice splashed over the edge of my cup onto my dinner. Penny picked up her knife and fork and carried on eating as if nothing had happened. I blinked back tears and told her that I wasn't feeling hungry anymore, and she let me leave the table and go to my room. Sorry. It was pitch black outside when I heard Dad's car pull up, and I crept a little way down the stairs and sat quietly in the darkness. Penny opened the door and waited as Dad lifted 2 holdalls out of the boot and an overnight bag for Mum at the hospital, a bag for the baby, tiny white clothes inside still unused. Mum headed straight for Penny's open arms. But just as she stepped into the hallway, her legs went from under her. It was as if she'd fallen into quicksand and she sank slowly, deep, deep down. Penny kneeled on the floor beside her and held her, stroking her head and rocking her back and forth as my mum sobbed. "It's okay. Let it all go. It's okay. I'm here. Penny's here." I went back upstairs into the bathroom, locked the door and began to wash my hands. I knew I was to blame for this, and I knew that if I washed away all the germs, then they couldn't hurt anyone else. I just needed to keep on top of it from now on, like a big boy. That was all. That's all I needed to do. And that's when it started. Secretly at first. For years, I could easily sneak off to the bathroom and wash my hands over and over without anyone noticing. But then, Hannah and Mr. Jenkins announced to everyone that they were expecting a baby, and bam, things got a lot worse. Fortunately, I didn't think anyone had stopped to look back through time and figure out why I was doing what I was doing. But it was simple, really. I cleaned because Callum died, and Callum died because of me. Mysteries.